Jeff,
Hey!
wonderful to see you. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent.
So let's jump in. Thank you so much for joining us for this ASP chat. This month, we had prepared and had planned to focus on the transition of power and Biden's first 100 days. Obviously, there are things about this transition that are unprecedented. Our way of dealing with that is to stay on course and focus on the mechanisms of the transition, the positions that transist, so people understand better what is important, what folks do, and can feel a little bit more attached to the jobs that people like you have held in the past. You specifically were the national security advisor to President Bush and were deeply involved in the transition at the end of the Bush administration into the Obama administration. Biden is most likely going to be sworn in without any members of his national security team confirmed. Is that unusual?
There has been a trend over the years to try to help the new administration by confirming their key appointments, particularly national security appointments, before January 20th, before the inauguration. That's a recent trend. It's a good trend. It allows them to get up and running. There were problems in the 2000 election because of the contested election, and obviously there have been all kinds of problems in this election. So that opportunity, I think, has been missed. It's a bit of a setback, but the people that President-elect Biden has nominated, these are pretty seasoned folks. A lot of them were just in the administration in important positions 4 years ago. So it's unfortunate, but it's not fatal in any way, because I think it's only been 4 years, and a lot of these people are back in positions with which they're and in organizations in which they're familiar. So it's unfortunate, but I don't think it's a serious problem, to be honest.
Sure. Are there national security implications if the transition doesn't occur smoothly? And if so, what are they?
Well, one is you lose time. You know, the more you can front load the process of getting your nominations up to the Senate, getting hearings, getting people confirmed, the sooner you can get people in position, the better able you are to roll out new policies for the new administration. So the first casualty is time. The second casualty of an imperfect transition is surprise, that the new team doesn't understand there are events or developments that are going to hit them in the face soon, so they don't have time to prepare. And the third problem of an imperfect transition is they don't have all the background of the policies, so that they're making decisions with imperfect knowledge. Those things can all be overcome. And again, because this is a team that's pretty experienced, Vice President Biden, obviously 8 years as vice president. He is the president-elect, very experienced person, and he's filled his administration with nominees who have a great deal of experience. So again, I think the risks in this particular case are pretty low, but that is the risks you run with a delayed or disrupted transition.
There are thousands of pieces of classified materials and conflicts around the world changing at any given time. Given that during a normal transition, how is the information handed off from one administration to the next dealt with?
Well, you know, there's been, if you look over 50 years, there's been real progress here. I made the transition from the Ford administration to the Carter administration. I was one of 3 or 4 people asked to stay on the Carter administration. So when they came in on January 20th, they only had 2 or 3 or 4 staff members. All the documents had been taken because they're presidential documents and they leave with the president. So when Zbigniew Brzezinski showed up to be national security advisor, he had no staff and no documents. We've done better in the years since. And when the transition from Bush to Obama, there was a staff in place. The senior people left, but the junior people stayed. There was someone designated to head each organization. They had been told to copy the intelligence and the working papers they needed to do their job, so that on day one, when Jim Jones and Tom Donilon arrived, they had a staff, and the staff had the necessary documents in order to do their jobs, and they could begin to run the NSC from day one. That's what you want, and I know that Robert O'Brien has tried to do the same thing for Jake Sullivan. And one of the things Robert told me he had done is each of the directorates have put together a binder, which is all the key intelligence they think the new team will need to know the background on the issues they'll be handling. So I think we've over the decades come a long way. This transition is not perfect, been a bit disrupted, but I think they have made a real effort, both at State Department and at the NSC, to try to put the new team in as good a position as they can.
What are the day-to-day responsibilities of a national security advisor?
There's really two roles. One is to run the so-called interagency process. This is a process whereby representatives from all the various interested government agencies on national security and foreign policy issues get together and try to develop options for the president to move policies forward. And that's a process where the National Security Advisor is really the honest broker, making sure that everybody has had an opportunity to express their views, that everybody's views have gone before the president, and that the president then has a full suite of information needed to make decisions. And then the National Security Advisor, through the National Security Staff, make sure that that decision is executed by the various government agencies that have responsibilities to do that. So that's the first role, is running the interagency process as an honest broker. The second role is really being a confidential advisor to the president, giving the president your best views and advice as to the decisions that the president has to make. Those roles can be in tension. I think a good national security advisor makes clear that his national security colleagues, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and others kind of know what his or her views are, what he or she is telling the president. So they have an opportunity to provide a dissenting view. But I think you can run both roles in a way that's pretty transparent and serves the president's interests.
Speaking of serving the president, one of the largest differences in the Biden administration appears to be his approach to foreign affairs and dealing with foreign leaders around the world. What are some of the biggest global threats that President-elect Biden will inherit on the 22nd when he takes office?
Well, the big, I think, overriding issue is going to be China, which is, some people say it's an enemy, some people say it's an adversary. I think at least it is a strategic competitor that is challenging the United States with much more assertive policies militarily, economically, and geopolitically. That's number one challenge. Second of all, I think it will be challenging for the new administration to come up with a policy in the Middle East. They want to re-engage with Iran on a nuclear agreement that was agreed under the Obama administration and that the Trump administration withdrew from. They want to re-engage with Iran on that agreement, but they need to do it in a way that does not alienate our Arab and Israeli friends and allies in the region. But I think the real challenge, oddly enough, for our foreign policy is here at home. There are a lot of things we need to do in order to put ourselves in a position to compete with China effectively abroad, but also to convey and be a international leader of our friends and allies. We got to get our economy in order for it to produce inclusive growth. We got to show that our democratic system can actually make decisions that advance the interests of the American people. We've got to, in some sense, restore the faith of Americans here at home in our own democratic institutions, and to understand that America is better off and Americans are safer and more secure if America engages in the world with friends and allies to try to address global issues. Those things have, I think, been lost over the last decade or so, and they account for the phenomenon of the election of Donald Trump in 2016. So the Biden administration has enormous challenges overseas, but they have enormous challenges to address issues here at home that will provide a firm foundation from which the United States can engage on international issues. That's work that needs to be done as well.
How do you think the Biden administration's approach to dealing with these issues will differ from how the Trump administration dealt with them?
There will be a tonal difference. It'll be a lot less America first and a more discussion about working with friends and allies to solve common problems. So there will be a tonal difference. Second of all, I think they will engage and listen more closely to our friends and allies to try to develop common policies with friends and allies. I think they understand, perhaps better than President Trump did, that one of the real advantages the United States has in the international arena is our friends and allies, and that's real leverage for the United States. And thirdly, I think they will re-engage in some of the multinational institutions. They'll be more active in the United Nations. They'll probably go back into the World Health Organization. They'll work to reform the World Trade Organization. So I think those are ways in which I think you'll see the Biden administration doing things differently. I think there's one risk that I think the world really has changed in the last 4 years. And I hope people now returning to positions of responsibility in the Biden administration understand that. And a lot of talk about American leadership. For a lot of countries, American leadership means American diktat. And I would hope they're going to, in some sense, lead in a little different way, a way talking more about engagement, more about working with friends and allies. I think if they're smart, we'll see a little different way in which the United States engages in the world, and one that I think will be more effective.
Sure. President-elect Biden has spoken publicly about rejoining some of the major global agreements like the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear deal. What do you think is in Biden's playbook for the first 100 days when it comes to foreign policy?
One of the things we just said is that foreign policy and domestic policy are linked. And you need to have a strong platform here politically, economically, and militarily at home if you're going to be effective in the world. So the first thing he's got to do is deal with both the health and economic aspects of the coronavirus pandemic. We've got to fix that platform. Then he has already said that he wants to do something on Iran on the nuclear deal. That will raise a whole questions about Middle East policy. I think you'll see them engaging on that early, partly because there's not a lot of time with Iran. Iran goes into the Nowruz holiday, their New Year holiday, middle of February, and then pretty soon they have a presidential election. So there's some urgent things he'll have to do, engaging with Iran, figuring out how to engage with our allies on China, what to do about Afghanistan, where we are under a commitment to withdraw all our forces from Afghanistan in May. I think a lot of people think that would be hasty and premature. So there are some things that are going to force on his agenda early that he's going to have to deal with. But over the longer term, I think it's going to be re-engaging with allies, with them developing a strategy for dealing with China, and then recentering and sorting things out in the Middle East. I think those are going to be his biggest challenges.
You know, it didn't really occur to me until we started talking that you've overseen two of these transitions, and you've overseen them. Well, at least one of them wasn't the most agreeable time in our history as well, probably from Gerald Ford to President Carter. When you see what's going on now, is there anything you can say to the public who seems really disturbed that, yes, there are things that are unusual, but these mechanisms that are in place and how they'll be used to kind of move us into a transition in a way that can give us comfort? I
think that this transition, while it looks to Americans as almost non-existent because the President Trump contested the election until literally just a few days ago, I think beneath that, there has been a lot of positive activity and positive interaction between the incoming and the outgoing team. And second of all, this incoming team for President-elect Biden is a very experienced group. They've been here before. I know a lot of them. They are, I think, very experienced and reliable hands, know a lot. So I think in some sense, the formalities of transition are less critical for this one than they might be in other instances. So I think people ought to be pretty relaxed about it. This is a seasoned professional team. They know what they want to do. They've been there before. They understand how the government works. I don't think there should be particularly high anxiety as we go into this January 20 and beyond. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your insights. Everyone here at ASP does, and joining us on this ASP chat. Pleasure to be here. And I really appreciate and admire what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank
we need you.
Thank you.
Actually, you actually gave us one of the first lessons when we came to Washington. You explained to us the difference between a politician and an elected official. I remember you requested, you said, I'm not a politician. I don't know what those are, so I can't answer any politician questions. I can only answer elected official questions. So thank you for continuing to educate Chris and myself into how people do.
You guys are doing great. Nice to see you.
Take care.